Peach Pundit, the podcast, is a conversation filled with the personal opinions of the people who are participating. Any view or opinion expressed belongs only to the person who expressed it and not with anyone with whom that person is professionally affiliated. Ladies and gentlemen, do not adjust your podcast source. This is Peach Pundit, the podcast. I am Scott Turner, joined tonight by Buzz Brockway. And because Jason Pye is not here, we are going to get unapologetically patriotic during this episode.
Because we love America.
Because we love America. And we're never going to apologize. And we love our big, beautiful B-2 bombers. Mm-hmm. And our big, beautiful bunker busting bombs.
No matter how much they destroyed.
They could,
or some or whatever. They're still awesome.
We've got a lot to talk about tonight on the podcast. Like I said, Jason claims to have gone to some place called Rhode Island. We all know that that's not a real place.
All right, Scott, here, this showing my age and showing how weird I am. I'm a fan of the old Super Chicken cartoons, okay?
I've never even heard of this.
There was a Super Chicken. It came on during the George of the Jungle half-hour show that used to be on back when, probably before you were born, right? There was an episode, I kid you not, where a arch criminal stole the entire state of Rhode Island, just hooked it up to his ship and drug it out to sea and stole Rhode Island. So, as far as we know, it's still gone.
Rhode Island is a conspiracy theory. That's what Rhode Island is. It's a conspiracy by the smoke film filled backroom politicians so they can have an additional 2 U.S. senators and an extra member of the House of Representatives.
I mean, they might become a home of refugees from New York City since they just elected an anti-Semitic socialist as mayor. He's on the verge of becoming mayor. So
yeah, we're going to talk about that for sure, because I had an interest in following along with that last night and surprised that we already have a result, to be honest with you. But we have
I guess they don't officially, right? They still got he didn't cross the 50% threshold, but everybody assumes he will.
It's a mathematical probability.
Yes,
it's going to happen.
High probability.
Yeah, very high probability. But before we get started, we're going to pay some bills. Stay tuned for your fully blown patriotic version of Peach Pundit, the podcast.
Golden Retriever Rescue of Atlanta, GRRA, is an all-volunteer, tax-deductible charitable organization. They are dedicated to providing veterinary care, comprehensive evaluation, and foster and adoptive homes to golden and Labrador retrievers who are abandoned, mistreated, neglected, or left in shelters throughout Georgia. We encourage you to visit their website grra.com and help connect people and dogs that need each other in their lives. You truly can make this world a better place by helping find homes of gold for these golden-hearted pups.
Are you aspiring to serve your community? Want the tools and training to win a winning campaign on your own terms? Then listen up. AFP Georgia's Candidate School is now open for registration. Learn core skills from building your campaign team, crafting your message, fundraising, using grassroots organizing, and reaching voters. This isn't theory. It's a full hands-on boot camp custom designed to empower you to run for office. Whether you're thinking local or statewide, AFP Georgia's expert instructors will walk you through every step. Classes are filling fast, so register today at afp-ga.org/candidate school. That's afp-ga.org/candidate school. Don't wait. Your community's counting on you. AFP Georgia's Candidate School is your campaign's starting point. Thank you to our friends at Americans for Prosperity for being a Patreon to the podcast. If you too would like to be a Patreon, you can head on over to patreon.com/peachpundit and sign up for one of our tiers today. While you're thinking about it, hit that like and subscribe button. It'll help us out a ton. You can even leave a comment. We might even interact with it. Thank you again for listening. Buzz.
Scott.
Buzz. So last week we got into quite the conversation about Iran, not knowing that we were mere hours away from President Donald Trump bringing back all the neocons.
Yes, we're back, baby.
We are so back.
As a warmongering neocon rhino, I'm happy. I'm pleased, mostly pleased with President Trump right now.
Right. Right. I mean, you can always tell who has genuine TDS versus somebody who's just skeptical of the president at times.
Sure.
This is one of those litmus test moments
Yep.
where you can tell if somebody has TDS, they're trying to find a way right now to embarrass the president or make this a failure or whatever. The people like us, we're pretty critical of the president at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he's earned that criticism and that skepticism from us.
And it's on policy, right? Sure. I don't like his tone. I would prefer a more genteel, polite political discussion. But there's very few. I acknowledge that I am very much in the minority on that. That's just not how politics is done. So I get it. Mostly criticisms of him have been policy wise, and then this, I think. I was thinking about this morning, Scott. I think this enough is a unique moment in history to try to take out Iran's nuclear capabilities. Hamas is obliterated. Hezbollah is obliterated. Trump spent a month pounding the Houthis into submission. Russia has lost a million men, Scott, 1 million men in the war with Ukraine. They can't help. And the rest of, sure, you're going to get the denunciations from the rest of the Arab nations, but they're all secretly cheering Israel and America on because they don't want a nuclear Iran either. So this was a unique moment, and the president took that opportunity, and kudos to him. Now, I mean, I guess we'll get into it, I'm sure, but how obliterated is there? Was it completely taken out? Are they completely decapacitated, or the more action needed? And I hope that President Trump, if more action is needed, I hope that he follows up on that, and let's put it into their nuclear ambitions once and for all.
Certainly, we don't need a half measure right now, for sure. And we'll get to the reports and reports of reports,
yes,
in a minute. But before we get there, one of the things I wanted to bring up is there was zero resistance to this bombing. I guess Israel had done a ton of work taking out anti-aircraft capabilities that Iran may have had. Not a single shot was fired at our B-2 bombers. They didn't see them coming. They delivered their payload and they flew home. And not a single shot was fired at those birds as they flew through the air. One of the things that Donald Trump said that night when I watched him live from the White House was that no military in the world could have pulled this off, regardless of how much destruction there was, which we'll talk about in a minute. But regardless of that, what other Air Force in the world could take how many bombs? Was it 8, 6, 8?
Yeah, something 6 or 8.
6,
yep.
I think it's 6. 30,000-pound bombs and drop them on a mountain to collapse the tunnels and everything else underneath it that led to a facility that enriches uranium. There isn't one.
Right. I mean, and if you're China, if you're Russia, who have ambitions, territorial ambitions, Russia's trying to carry those out right now and boasting about how they're going to do more. I think privately they are, oh my goodness, look what these guys can do. They can send a bomber from Nebraska and reach anywhere in our country and drop bombs on us.
Yeah.
They can burrow down into the ground and into our underground layers and blow us to smithereens.
Right. There's no hiding from the United States military.
No.
None. You can try, and you might for a while, right? Osama bin Laden hid for a while, but eventually.
That was before. I was trying to think, Scott. I think that was before. Maybe I'm wrong on the history of this, but I think that was perhaps what prompted the development of these bunker buster bombs. Was bin Laden hiding in caves. We had certain types of weapons that penetrated, and got certain depth, but nothing like what these do. I maybe I'm wrong, but I think that experience with Osama bin Laden hiding deep under the ground caused the United States to say, we need something that can go deep.
Right.
And so they developed it.
Right. The military industrial complex did its thing.
Yes. All hail the military industrial complex.
Now, listen, I don't usually refer to myself as a neocon, but in today's MAGA overtaken GOP. It seems like anybody who espouses the traditional conservative view that we should have a strong military and a strong national defense is put into that neocon bucket. And anybody who sees threats like Iran's has 900 pounds of 60% enriched uranium, which, according to ChatGPT, which Jason loves to quote, ChatGPT says that Iran would have been able to enrich that to 90%, which is weapons grade, within 10 days. That is not a lot of time to react. And
Right.
they already had it ready to go.
And there's some questions about, do they have the capability to attach that to a missile that could,
Right.
deliver that payload, those payloads. I don't know.
We
But
don't know.
still-
Don't know if they have how far their ballistic missile program is.
No, but there's plenty of evidence that they are attempting to develop ICBMs
Yes.
that they, which would allow them to reach any capital of Europe through their terror network. They could take that uranium and deliver a smaller bomb.
Correct.
And do unbelievable damage anywhere in the world.
Correct. And we know that Iran is the number one state sponsor of terror, and it would not be implausible to believe. A reasonable person could reach the conclusion that the number one state sponsor of terror would want to enrich this to 90%. And if they don't have an ICBM to deliver that, they would find a more strategic way of doing it. That is a reasonable assumption, especially when they're chanting death to America. One of the things that has come out of this over the last 24 hours is this report that first broke on CNN and now other people are reporting it, that a preliminary battle damage assessment, BDA, has been done, and they don't think that they got it all. And Eric Erickson pointed out this was the same reporter who quoted anonymous sources to tell the world that the Hunter Biden laptop story was bogus and was Russian misinformation or disinformation, which we now know to be false.
And another one was one involved in the infamous Steele dossier, which was filled with all sorts of inaccuracies. It came from the Hillary Clinton campaign,
right?
That caused the whole Russiagate investigation in Trump's first term.
So, talking about that for just a minute, I don't care if they're completely destroyed at this point or not. I think that there's no way that it didn't set them back from where they were before we bombed them. The facilities there that provide the power, they would have to rebuild all that stuff. We can see that from satellite photos that the facilities there, at least on the surface, have been flattened.
Yeah.
But we don't know how far down they went. We don't know if they got to the actual room where the centrifuges were.
Right.
But if they were underground, I can't imagine that the tunnels that give access to people walking in and out of there were not at damage to the point where, I mean, these were huge, massive ordinances.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have to dig it out at the very least, and that's going to take them time.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that the report at this point matters so much.
I will say, Scott, there was a Times of Israel report that said they had set, because as I recall, the CNN report, the initial CNN report was, or maybe it was the New York Times. Anyway, that the initial report was hardly any damage at all. Maybe you set them back a few days. And at the same time, the Times of Israel was reporting that initial assessments by Israeli officials were set them back at least several years. So that's more encouraging. And I find it preposterous as always. We don't even know, I'm sure they moved the uranium. You mean to tell me that the Mossad, who obviously is all over Iran and has been for some time, that knows the movements, that knew the movements of every one of their scientists and every one of their generals, and took them out and was making phone calls to the members of the Iranian regime saying, we know where you are, get on a plane and leave the country if you know what's good for you. That group didn't have eyes on the uranium,
right,
and wasn't tracking its movement, and wouldn't notice if Iran was moving it around?
Yeah.
Come on.
I
That just
think it's
defies
to
logical belief.
for me to wrap this up. I I I think it's reasonable right now to just wait.
Yeah.
We've preached patience here in the past. Sometimes we've been good at sometimes I have been good at following my own advice, and other times I have not. But in this particular case, we won't know for a while. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
That's okay. What has happened since then is there's been a ceasefire, and this was negotiated by our president. So you have to give him kudos for this. He negotiated the ceasefire. That being said, he wasn't too pleased with our ally Israel, was he?
No.
No, he was not, and engaged in some potty mouth talk where, basically what he gave it. The ceasefire was supposed to start in 12 hours.
Yeah.
Israel apparently already had bombers in the air. They were dropping more bombs.
Well, from what I understand, according to Israel, Iran fired missiles after the 12 hours. And so they said, hey, they violated it. So bombers are in the attack. We're launching an attack because they violated it. And that's when Trump got really mad with the Israelis and told Netanyahu to turn them around. And apparently he did.
Yeah.
And there was some question. Look, we don't know who's left in Iran to give orders. Khomeini has not been, the Ayatollah has not been heard from.
He did tweet.
Yeah.
He did
Okay. So
tweet.
somebody tweeted under his name.
Exactly.
So we don't know. So there was some question, and I think it's fair to question this, that the attack, the missiles or whatever that were fired after the ceasefire were technically supposed to end. And there were weird times, and this is going to end in 6 hours, and this is going to end in 12 hours, and 12 hours after that, this is going to happen. And it was kind of weird. That was Trump's, at least the Trump administration's assumption was that it was a mistake and that Israel shouldn't have just pounced, so to speak.
So
he used some rather salty language, way worse than anything I've ever used.
There's nothing better than
podcast,
seeing the F word spelled out on Twitter by C-SPAN. Can I just say? I mean, that was I
did love the meme where, the meme that's been going around for a while of Trump standing on the lawn and some kid mowing the White House lawn and he's yelling at the kid. And they had that phrase, they don't know what the bleep they're doing. Yeah. He's yelling at the kid, he's mowing the grass.
I just felt like in that moment, Donald Trump was all of us.
Yeah.
Because we've been so frustrated with the Middle East as a country for so long. He was all of us in that moment. He expressed all of our frustrations, the entire country in one sentence. And then he just turned around and walked away real slow with some swagger.
Yeah.
I mean, look, here's another example of whether or not you think a litmus test for whether or not you have TDS. If you didn't see that and at least chuckle or smile and you thought, oh my God, he's ruining the country. If that was your thought, you probably have TDS.
Right. I mean, it was one of those moments of a genuine display of emotion by a president. We've had a few of them throughout the years, and that was one of those. So chalk it up to that.
Right. So you wanted to talk about how Georgia politicians are reacting to this.
Yeah. So there was a press release sent out by House Republicans. From what I understand, it was organized by Representative Brent Cox, and all but one Republican member of the House signed on. I'm not going to name this guy's name. He has a legitimate policy difference, and I don't care. People can have legitimate policy differences here. It doesn't make him not a patriot. He's a good guy. And joined by one Democrat. And I'm not going to blast the other Democrats because I don't know what phone calls were made. We don't know who else was invited, but it would be no surprise to observers of Georgia politics that Representative Esther Panitch, the legislature's lone Jewish member, signed on. So it's kind of interesting. 100 Republicans and one Democrat all praising Trump for the action that he took.
So bipartisanship at the State House in praise of President Donald Trump.
Yes. And look, I've seen Representative Panitch on Twitter saying I'm not a fan of his, but give credit where credit is due. He did what needed to be done here, and he's done something decisive to help to help the Jewish people and the people of Israel.
But who in Georgia didn't? That's a Republican didn't love it. You don't have to name the name of the state rep, but there are
Yeah.
others.
Yeah, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, as you might imagine. This kind of honestly, I responded to this one. She goes on Steve Bannon's War Room and tearfully talking about how nobody slept better after we bombed Iran, and we're getting threats to our homeland, and America is being told to shelter in place, and Americans abroad, or et cetera. Which kind of, I mean, look, I don't doubt the sincerity of her belief that we should not have gotten involved. Okay, but she's wrong, and she doesn't see the contradiction in her statement. You can't say America first, nothing that happens over there is our business or affects us at all, but then say the moment that they're attacked, oh no, the sleeper cells that are in the United States are going to be activated. The people who have been planning to do horrible things to Americans are going to try to do them. That totally undermines your thing that your claim that Iran is of no concern to us when they're sitting there plotting to kill us and have snuck people into this country, allegedly. And indeed, 11 Iranian nationals who came in illegally have been arrested since the bombing. Several of them, at least initially, identified as having ties to terrorist organizations. So, yes, of course, it was in our national interest to attack Iran and to take out their nuclear threat. So, I'm sorry, Congress. With all due respect, Congresswoman, you're just wrong. You're wrong on this one.
So I'm going to read to you, our audience, one of the things that she wrote immediately after the bombing. This is from a tweet. It's dated June 2nd. She posted it at 1:53 p.m. She said, "My thoughts on bombing Iran. I don't know anyone in America who has been the victim of a crime or killed by Iran, but I know many people who have been murdered by victims of crime committed by criminal illegal aliens or murdered by cartel and Chinese fentanyl/drugs. Almost everyone in our country can relate to this fact. However, America has not dropped bunker-busting bombs on the cartel's sophisticated drug tunnels, launched tomahawks or massive cartel poisonous drug operations, or gone to war against the cartel's international terrorist networks. Neocon warmongers beat their drums of war and act like Billy Badasses going to war in countries most Americans have never seen and can't find on the map, but never find the courage to go to war against the actual terrorists who actually do kill Americans, invade our land, and make billions doing it day after day, year after year. I'm 51 years old. I'm Gen X. I've watched our country go to war in foreign lands for foreign causes on behalf of foreign interests for as long as I can remember. I was in the 10th grade when Desert Storm started, and my father, before me, was sent to Vietnam, another senseless foreign war. America is $37 trillion in debt, and all of these foreign wars have cost Americans trillions and trillions of dollars that never benefited any American. American troops have been killed and forever torn apart, physically and mentally, for regime change, foreign wars, and for military industrial base profits. I'm sick of it. I can easily say I support nuclear armed Israel's right to defend themselves, and also say at the same time I don't want to fight or fund nuclear armed Israel's wars, nor any other country for that matter. I am sick of funding foreign aid in foreign countries and foreign everything. I want to fund American interests and issues. I want great trade deals so American businesses and people can afford goods and be successful. I want low inflation and low interest rates. I want American construction, housing, and manufacturing to boom. I want Americans to be rich and have security in their future. I want my children's generation to have a great future. My kids are 22, 25, and 27. I'm not going to read anymore. You get the idea. This prompted me to respond to her with a photo of Brian McVeigh. I met Brian McVeigh in the second grade, Mrs. Williams' class at Enterprise Elementary School in Enterprise, Florida. Brian was a good friend of mine. I remember the last time I saw him. It was at a Subway in Orange City, Florida. He had just gotten home from the Air Force's version of basic training, and he told me how much he loved it. And this was he was a muscular, fit dude when he went in, and we were on the wrestling team together, and just a great guy. And he was one of the Americans who were killed at the Khobar Towers bombing, which was committed by Hezbollah, which was funded by Iran. Iran killed my friend. So there's one. But what I noticed was I was not the only one to respond to her that way. There were others. Just because you don't know somebody, Representative Green, doesn't mean that Americans haven't been killed by Iranian terrorism. There are hundreds and hundreds of examples of Iranian terrorism killing Americans.
Mm-hmm.
These people shout and chant in their parliament, death to our country. It is absolutely within our interest. You can call me a neocon all you want. But what she showed me in that moment and how she's responded to this, it's two things. Number one, she's about herself. It's I. And two, that her ideology does not extend beyond platitudes and sloganeering. That's it. It's just slogans. There's nothing, you peel back that veneer of the slogan and there's nothing there. There's nothing substantive. There's no major policy. It's just isolationism and America only, not America first. We talked last week about how there's this division that has built up around this issue over what America first means. Well, you know, the guy who created that slogan is in the White House. So he gets to determine what that means. It's his. So he's going to define it. Now, we may disagree with it at times, certainly on tariffs, ad nauseum railed against bad economic policy. When we talk about the benefit to not just the world, but specifically us, it is a benefit to the world that what happened when those B-2 bombers flew through Iranian airspace and nobody took a shot at them. Yep. We got a huge benefit out of that. We are safer today than we were this time last week. And that's the truth. And if you can't see the benefit to America for that, and you're so wrapped around the axle on, oh, this is going to be a foreign war, get out of the way. Let somebody else who's serious-minded do that job. Because you're not it. Yeah. She's not shown she's up for the moment in this. And it's not even like she's making an ideological or a constitutional argument even. Like Thomas Massey saying, hey, war powers, we need to get a hold of this.
Yeah.
That's different.
A legitimate debate.
Right. You can have a legitimate debate around that.
Right.
But simply saying we should never, ever intervene when we're threatened this way. And if you don't see that as a threat, you are not a serious-minded person. I'm sorry. You're just not.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder her and Tucker Carlson and some of these others that have been, you know, so out there. I mean, is there any, in their mind, is there ever any circumstance by which we would get involved in a war? Should we have ignored Hitler and the Japanese Imperial Japan and just let them? Well, it doesn't affect us. Doesn't affect us. I mean, it just that's an extreme isolationism is just ridiculous. And look, I think, you know, it's obvious that President Trump does not want to send troops over there to occupy Iran or in any shape, manner, to fight them on the ground or any of that. And like I said, I'm worried. I was worried that he wasn't going to do anything, and it would all be on Israel. And there were other ways that they could have gone about attempting to damage and destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities that would have been much more dangerous and would have cost a lot of lives and would have been long and arduous. So this was the simplest and quickest way to go about it.
Right.
And like I said, if these reports, you know, as you said earlier, Scott, we got to wait and see what is the true damage. And I hope that President Trump doesn't listen again, rejects these voices of Tucker and Marjorie Taylor and Steve Bannon and others, and finishes the job. If it's not finished, I hope he does, because it's so critically important. And I don't understand. You can say we shouldn't be embroiled in foreign wars. We don't have to be America. We don't have to be the world's police force. And you get a lot of agreement on those sorts of things with me, even as a warmongering neocon, as folks might think I am. But you have to. There are moments in time, as I described earlier, and this was such a moment when you have to act. And he did, and he was right. And let's finish the job, Mr. President. Let's finish the job.
You just made a point I think is important. And to wrap this up a little bit, Donald Trump's view on this was not regime change. He did not go in there thinking regime change, which, the real neocons like Lindsey Graham, oh, we need regime change. He's out there saying regime change, regime change. But that wasn't his goal in this. His goal was to neutralize a specific threat. And he put the world on notice. If there is a specific threat, I will send pilots in a stealth aircraft in the middle of the night from the middle of the country, and you won't even know they're there, and they're going to drop these huge bombs.
Well, he did send out some True Social or something saying what MAGA, make Iran great again, So
MAGA. Is that with a hard G or a soft G?
Yeah, I don't know, and no, not to be confused with Migos, the Atlanta R&B band, a hip hop band, but yeah. So but that was once and only once. I don't think he's said that again. And I don't think, as you're right, Scott, I don't think he's committed to a policy of regime change.
No.
That may happen.
It
but
very well
I
could.
don't think it'll be by Donald Trump's hand.
Well, the Israelis have definitely taken out a ton of the military capabilities of Iran,
yes.
And there is no restocking at this point. So all that to say, wasn't ever, at least from what I can tell at this point, again, all that could change. But from what I can tell at this point, I don't think it was his goal to get us into a protracted and long-term battle with Iran.
No.
He wanted to take out this specific threat and then leave it be.
Yeah.
And that's the way he's behaved before and after. Even in the critics who are supposedly his friends telling him, you can't do that. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene. He's saying, look,
right.
I'm not engaging in a full-blown escalated conflict. I want to take out this one threat.
Right. Well, think back through the first administration. He took out Soleimani, the Iranian mastermind of the deaths of many, many Americans.
Uh-huh.
He, during just 2 months ago, a month and a half ago or whatever, he said, we're tired. The Houthis have attacked Americans and are interfering with international trade and commerce. And so he bombed them for a month. Yeah, he's willing to use force, but in a quick and decisive way, not in a long and protracted way.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for him and for us, he hasn't been faced with those sorts of things. So
when we get back, we're going to talk about Buddy Carter's reaction, some more PSC drama, and one particular candidate for Congress has an opening salvo that you cannot ignore. We'll be right back.
Peach Pundit has an anonymous Patreon who would like to invite you to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. No one should fight Alzheimer's alone. With your help, no one will. Learn more on their website, alz.org.
Conservatives Concerned is a network of political and social conservatives who question the alignment of capital punishment with conservative principles and values. Our programs include educating conservatives about the failed death penalty system and mobilizing them to bring about its end. We come to this issue for a variety of reasons. Some believe that small government and the death penalty don't go together, especially when we compare the high costs of capital punishment to life without possibility of release. Some don't trust the state to get it right. We already know that some innocent people have been sentenced to death, and for others, it may already be too late. Some believe that the death penalty contradicts our values about protecting life. Find out more at conservativesconcerned.org.
Well, there's one member of Congress from the Georgia delegation who does not share Marjorie Taylor Greene's consternation whatsoever. His name is Buddy Carter. He just happens to be running for the United States Senate. And he decided that he wanted to nominate Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in brokering the ceasefire between Iran and Israel.
The 12-day war that Trump's already named it. It's the 12-day war, right? So
So what's your reaction to Buddy Carter?
Well, I think, circumstances have, it's too early. It's too early to do something like that because, for a number of reasons, but, of what you hit on earlier, Scott, there are things we don't know yet. We don't fully know how damaged it is. We don't know if the ceasefire is going to hold. It's held for a few days, but that was tenuous. And anytime you're dealing with stuff in the Middle East, it can change in a heartbeat. And all it takes is for Iran, and I would not at all be shocked at some point soon, they, in an effort to save them, for the ruling mullahs to save themselves, lash out at somebody or something, maybe even us. And then what? Well, then, we respond, Israel responds, whatever happens. But I think it's too early to start handing out Nobel Peace Prizes. And, I understand the, Ultra MAGA has been wanting to give Trump a Nobel Peace Prize for a long time because Obama got one for kind of
Doing nothing.
Getting himself elected.
Yeah, that's the only thing Barack Obama did, and when he got his
Yes.
Nobel Peace Prize, was he was elected president.
And look, if you want to look, if there were reports the other day that Syria wants to join the Abraham Accords, the Abraham Accords, in a more rational time, the Abraham Accords that President Trump and his team accomplished in the first administration would be worthy of consideration for Nobel Prize, because countries that have never been at peace with Israel are now at peace with Israel. And Saudi Arabia, many people think, prior to the October 7th attack of 2023, that Saudi Arabia was very close to signing on to Abraham Accord agreement with Israel. So, I mean, maybe he deserves one, but I think let's let this play out some more before we start handing him the Nobel Prize.
I'm gonna put you on the spot for a little bit here.
All right.
So I apologize for doing this to you. I didn't prep you for this. Can you name for me any of Buddy Carter's legislative victories?
I hate to be, I'm sure he has some, but I don't, because Congress hardly passes any bills.
Right.
So,
but what has he been, or let's lower the bar. What has he been leading on?
Well,
what are some issues policy-wise when you think of Buddy Carter? You think he's the guy who's leading that?
I think pharmacist reform, which kind of what he did in the Georgia Senate. He was passed bills through relating to that, and I think he's been pushing that sort of stuff in the Congress as well.
See, you're more knowledgeable about that than I am. The only thing I know about Buddy Carter is what he's been telling me lately, right? And he served in the Senate when I was in the House, but I didn't get to know him because he became a member of Congress pretty early in my tenure.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he's like independently wealthy dude, and he can fund his own campaigns and stuff like that.
I've always found him to be a very nice guy. I visited him at least once while he was in D.C. as a member of Congress. And I'm not trying to take
away from any of that.
No, I think this is where you're headed, Scott. He's definitely playing to, he's remaking himself into the most MAGA of MAGAist people.
Right.
Right.
It looks
but I don't think that's absent the MAGA movement. I think Buddy Carter is a run-of-the-mill Georgia, I don't mean this insulting, a normal Georgia Republican.
Well,
that's pro-business.
Right.
Probably would vote for things that you and I probably if we compare, right. Yeah, he'd vote for lower taxes and the Second Amendment, but he'd probably if we compared his voting record to yours and mine's, there would be some disagreement over Georgia Chamber of Commerce type pieces of legislation.
Yeah,
right.
Like preferential tax treatment for specific companies. You and I voted against all that stuff, which is why we are considered more conservative than other legislators in Georgia. It was on tax policy. We weren't going to tilt the playing field of the marketplace in favor of any one player. We wanted the playing field economically to be level so that everybody had a shot at economic freedom and wealth and being able to create something out of nothing, which is sort of the American promise. But Buddy Carter hasn't shown me what he's for. Like only thing he's shown me through all this stuff. He introduced a resolution earlier this year to rename Greenland Red, White, and Blue Land. And now, before the smoke had cleared the air at Florida, he's willing to nominate the president of the United States. He's doing this for an audience of one. He's doing this for Donald Trump so that he can get that endorsement that he is coveting.
Right. That's the big that you're exactly right, Scott. That's the big competition right now. And Governor Kemp's in the mix of this too, because Kemp, has said he wants as the least blood shed in this primary as possible,
Right.
so that we can take on John Ossoff with the full force. Yeah, it's audition time.
And Brian Kemp has told his supporters, keep your powder dry.
Right.
That's what he has said to those of us that support him. Keep your powder dry. So that indicates to me that anybody's in the race right now, and that's Buddy Carter and John King,
Yeah.
don't have his endorsement, don't have his support. And because Brian Kemp has been talking with Donald Trump about finding a candidate that can beat John Ossoff, Donald Trump has held back on that. But here's Buddy Carter nominating himself for the Orange Lips Award. How much of Donald Trump can you kiss before somebody else gets in the race?
Cheetos will do that to you.
I mean, I don't know what else to look. I want my candidates. I've never lived in Buddy Carter's district, but right now, red, white, and blue land and Nobel Peace Prize stuff, it's not enough for me to go vote for him.
All right. So since we're on the topic, since we're off topic and we're off the agenda, and we're talking about the Senate race, I'm a little surprised. There's some big shoes to drop out there.
Oh yeah.
We don't know. Secretary Raffensperger has not announced his intentions yet. Neither has Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. So I remember I told you guys I woke up at 2 a.m. one morning and thought, well, why the heck wouldn't Donald Trump call Burt Jones to run if Governor Kemp said no? Yes. And there you go. Scott's holding up, for you audio listeners, Scott is holding up a beautiful glossy 4-page mailer that he got, and I got too, from the Lieutenant Governor, paid for by his Lieutenant Governor account.
Paid for by Burt Jones for Georgia.
Yes, and I believe that's the Lieutenant Governor
leadership pack.
Yes, and so what's he going to do? And I don't know. I just get more and more curious that
the only office on this mail piece is Lieutenant Governor, right? But we already know that many members of his own caucus have declared that they're running for LG, for the nomination for LG. And we have one, I don't know what Greg Dolezal is going to do, but he's still rumored to be.
Yeah, he's kind of the last rumored candidate to decide.
But we have 3 announced candidates for LG already: John Kennedy, Blake Tillery, and Steve Gooch.
Yeah.
All 3 of which come from very influential positions.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Gooch was majority leader. Pro tem of the Senate was John Kennedy. The appropriations chairman in the Senate is Blake Tillery. So you have 3 Republicans already declared for a seat that Burt Jones currently holds and has not said that he wants to run for anything else at the moment. We all suspect it's going to be governor. But you're right. I mean, it's still out there.
Having more doubts. I mean, honestly.
And I get asked all the time, a couple times a week, what's Brad Raffensperger going to do?
Yeah.
Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Right here. I have no idea. I really don't. I've asked multiple members of their staff who I'm close with. I've asked former members of their staff who I'm close with. And I get told every single time the decision has not been made, and it could be one or the other. One of those. So
since we're speculating wildly, is Brad Raffensperger waiting to see which way Burt Jones goes? Well, and he goes the other way.
I think
if Burt zigs, Brad zags.
I think that could be part of one of the benefits of waiting at this point.
Yeah.
I don't know what Burt is waiting for. I really don't. It's been rumored that he's going to run for governor for 3 years.
Yeah.
From the moment he stepped into the rostrum at the front of the Senate, he was running for governor.
Yeah. Well, I think when you have the ability to raise money quickly like he does, or if you're Brad Raffensperger, you have the ability to write yourself a nice sized check to prime the pump of your campaign. You don't have to get out there. But I think the governor's race is different than the Senate race. We don't have Governor Kemp saying, I'm trying to unite the party behind one person. And so you have Attorney General Carr locking down support. Every day that nobody else jumps in the race is a day that another person decides Chris Carr's my guy.
There's a data point
So-
there I want to throw it at you in the audience. And that is that last week, actually, somebody messaged me and asked me if we would run the ad on Peach Pundit. And I told them no, because it's part attack ad and part positive. But there is a pro Chris Carr PAC. And supposedly PACs are not allowed to coordinate with campaigns. But they came out with I think a 60-second ad. In the first part, they attack Burt Jones, which was why I didn't want to publish it at Peach Pundit. And I actually told the person, if it was all positive about Chris, I would have run it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't all positive about Chris. The back half of it was. But the Burt Jones camp's reaction to that is the data point I want to share with you, which is it's nice to know that the lieutenant governor is living rent-free in Chris Carr's head, which indicates to me that they are gearing up for a governor's race. It just, he doesn't have to get in right now.
Right.
So waiting for him is not a strategic disadvantage. Chris Carr had to, right? Because he had to go raise money, and during the legislative session, he wasn't allowed to raise money.
Right.
So he had to get out there early, even though I've poked fun at him for doing that. Buzz, speaking about campaigns and elections, we just had a super low turnout PSC primary.
Yeah.
What is this that you sent me about more legal challenges? We may not actually have the general PSC election this year.
Yeah. I was just, looking around and I see an article published yesterday, actually. I guess actually it's in the AJC Politics, blog thing. Bluestein, Tia Mitchell, Patricia Murphy, and Adam Beam. And one of the items, let me scroll down here and find it. Okay, Georgians voted for 2 Public Service Commission seats in last week's primary, and 1 race is headed to a runoff. Our former colleague, Keisha Waits, is in that runoff. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals has granted a motion to expedite a lawsuit alleging this year's special election violate the Georgia Constitution's requirement for the state's utility regulators to serve 6-year terms. The case could be heard in August or September, and the ruling could come in the days, weeks, or months afterward. So they go on to speculate from an article. This is kind of taken from information gathered by Mark Neese of the AJC. That's not out of the question that that the election is halted, that the general election is halted for those 2 seats.
Can I just say, these judges need to get the stink out of Georgia elections. They just need to, Karens, stop, mind your own business. Bunch of Karens. The reason we're in this is because we had a 3-year delay from the last time we were allowed to elect our public service commissioners. And so you've removed our ability to have elections. And so the legislature was trying to tweak things so that we could still have offset year elections for PSC.
Right.
And that was in reaction to stuff that you guys, sorry, Miss Laura, dicked around with. Stop dicking around with elections, judges. Jeez, oh, Pete. Look, it's one thing if somebody is genuinely violating the law or the Constitution by passing an unconstitutional bill and trying to prohibit voters from being able to cast their ballots for whatever reason. It is completely different when, like, the state election board decides to go way outside of their authority and take legislative powers that don't belong to them as if they had them all along. That's a different thing. This scenario that we're facing right now was created by the judges. And I am a big defender of the courts and separation of powers and the courts being a free and fair arbiter of what is the law. But continuing to run to the courthouse because you don't like the results, which is what this feels like to me, is actually damaging to the institution of elections and confidence in the elections. They need to just let it play out, because nobody here is being denied their ability to vote.
Right. There are all sorts of counties that have at-large seats on their county commissions. There are all sorts of cities. Georgia has 600 cities. There are many of them, some of them who have at-large posts.
And you have cities in this state that are so small, 5 to 1,000 people, that if they have 4 council members, They just try to find 4 people that will run. And it's difficult.
I know of one North Georgia county that has a seat on their school board that is specifically drawn to ensure that there is a candidate from a certain small town elected to the board. If that I could see get thrown out because it's the one person, one vote. There's not equal representation across that particular county, but there it is.
Right.
It exists.
And in some cities,
these things happen.
If they're smaller cities, they're allowed to do this thing where the top 4 vote getters get to be council members.
Yeah.
So if there are 5 or 6 people in the ballot, you go and you cast four votes. Technically, that's not one person, one vote.
Right.
Right. But the top 4 vote getters get to be council members, and they have to do it that way only because the population doesn't allow for qualified people to run for those seats. It's
right.
It's
the
hard.
better approach. I don't know. There have been bills dropped in the past. I recall early in my tenure, there was some talk of that, to change how the PSC is elected, and it never went anywhere. I don't understand. Why aren't Democrats dropping bills? Why aren't they saying, why do they make that their top priority and convince the public that this needs to happen instead of trying, once again, Scott, trying to go around the normal legislative process to achieve a certain end, convince 91 members of the House and 29 members of the Senate and the governor that this needs to change and change the law.
You know who I think would be a solid constitutionalist that could wrap their mind around separation of powers and constitutionally limited government is my friend Jim Kingston.
Yeah.
Jim is running for the aforementioned Buddy Carter's congressional seat since Buddy's decided he wants to be in the Senate. Jim is the son of Jack Kingston. And full disclosure, I did endorse Jack Kingston a long time ago when he ran for Senate. I got to know Jim during that time. He was just out of college a decade ago.
Yes.
During that time. So also in full disclosure, I once made an inappropriate, that's what she said joke, and Jack shot me in the ribs with his elbow real good. So
he's a family man, so you're not going to pull that stuff with him around.
That story goes like this. I'm going to share it with our audience. I endorsed him. We were at one of my campaign donors' homes in my district, and Jack came for a meet and greet at this guy's house. It's a very nice house in Canton. And he had been traveling all around the state, and he was tired, and you could tell he was tired, and he had a cough drop in his mouth. And he said something along the lines of, "It's hard for me to talk with this thing in my mouth." And I said, "That's what she said." And he just wham.
Sorry, Miss Laura. Sorry, Miss Laura.
He got me good. Right in the ribs. I can still feel the pain, actually. But yeah, if you ever doubted whether or not I take myself too seriously, a sitting member of Congress who's running for the United States Senate heard me tell but that's what she said joke. But Jim made some news this week because his opening haul, he has not formally announced his campaign yet, but I talked to him. We got this press release, so I talked to him, and he says, "Scott, I'm incredibly humbled. I have $500,000 in the bank." I was like, "So I mean, like commitments? No, not commitments. No. These checks have cleared. It's in the bank. Like I have it. I have cash on hand, $500,000." And I was like, "Holy crap, that's a really big number."
Yes.
And I've heard rumor that there are a couple of county commissioners down there who are thinking about throwing their hat in the ring to run for the seat. But I think that $500,000 number, if you can't match that in the next 60 days, and I'm being generous, like if you can't match that in the next 2 weeks, you have to ask yourself, can you keep up with Jim Kingston?
Right. Yeah, no, exactly.
And you might be able to. I mean, there are lots of money down there, right? There's, Tybee Island and St. Simons, and there's a lot of wealth down there. Maybe you can go tap into it. But Jim's got a head start on you.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's not just the name, right? I mean, Jack Kingston was a popular congressman. He 20 something years, I believe he served.
A long time.
So they reelected him over and over and over again. And I'll just say this: one of the things that really impressed me about Jack Kingston when he was running, he spent all those years in Congress, and I got to know Jim a little bit, during the campaign, and then afterward, Jack made a heck of a lot of his kids' events, life events, right?
Right.
School plays, little league games, and I don't know how to say this without sounding mean to other people, but all of Kingston kids that I met are normal people who like their parents,
Right.
right? They love their parents.
Yes.
I mean, I mean, it's very sad to say, but you see, I remember Rob Woodall told me this. Went to visit him in Washington, and he said, "You see people come up here who they're separated from their family, they're a long way from home, and they end up doing things that they never wanted to do and never thought they would do just because of the over the time. It's just not good for a man to be separated from his family for a long period of time. It opens up all sorts of doors to temptation. And you look at Jack Kingston and his family, and there's no evidence of any of that ever happened. Anything. They're a family that loved each other, was intact. And I've been impressed as heck with Jim.
Yeah.
I think he'll do a great job. As a member of
Jim's been
Congress.
in the insurance business for
Yes.
about 10 years now. He's built up a good book of business doing that, and he's been successful. And he's had to sign the front of a paycheck, and he has a real world life experience. It's not
Yes.
just his dad. It's not his dad's name. It's the Jim's
Right.
name.
That's
the
where we're
ballot.
headed. You're right.
Yeah.
$500,000 isn't just, oh, let me curry favor with Jack Kingston. No, this is, I really like Jim. I want to support him.
Right.
That's what this is about.
Right. So good luck to Jim. We're going to wrap this up with our last topic, which is not directly related to Georgia politics, but tangentially, if you squint your eyes just the right way. Did you follow the New York City mayor's race at all?
I did. And it's because you guys know I'm a regular listener of the Commentary Magazine podcast, who are all folks who, most of them are Jewish. It's a Jewish publication, and many of them live in New York City. And they have been growing increasingly worried about the guy who it looks like is going to be the next mayor of New York because, well, just no way to beat around the bush, an anti-Semitic socialist.
So I'm going to.
He finished first last night, and
Yeah.
with almost a majority.
So I have co-authored a piece. I'm going to read a draft to you guys. So it's possible this will be somewhat different, but my co-author on this is former Virginia House of Delegates member Chris Saxman, also a Republican. If Chris was here in Georgia, he would be pretty far right to many of the members of the Georgia House. But he and I decided we were going to write this particular piece. And the headline is, "Don't blame ranked choice voting just because Democrats had to choose between a socialist and a swamp monster."
Yes.
Democrats in New York recently faced a thrilling choice. They could vote for a self-proclaimed socialist or a scandal-plagued former governor who seemed to believe campaigning was beneath him. There were other uninspiring candidates in the race, unable to break through in a party that can't seem to get past Bernie v. Hillary. Ultimately, it wasn't so much a contest of ideas as it was the political version of Would You Rather with two options that should probably come with warning labels. Naturally, some folks are now trying to blame ranked choice voting for the outcome. Let's be clear. This wasn't a failure of RCV. It was a failure of the Democratic Party to offer credible, broadly appealing candidates. RCV just counted the votes and told the truth. Ranked choice voting doesn't care what your politics are. It isn't designed to favor the far left or the far right. It's just a better way to reflect what a majority of voters actually want. And regardless of who wins, RCV still delivers the same benefits. It elects a majority winner, saves taxpayer money without costly and low turnout runoffs, and gives voters a chance to express real preferences. If anything, this election showed how to run a good campaign and a bad one. It's a lesson for conservatives who should want to use the system to take on the swamp and win instead of writing it off completely. Let's talk about the campaigns. Andrew Cuomo ran the political equivalent of a vanity tour. He skipped candidate forums, ignored the press, and held a few sleepy events. He assumed his last name, establishment endorsements, and donor checks would do the hard work for him. But voters weren't buying it. Meanwhile, Zohran Mamdani ran like he actually wanted the job. He walked across Manhattan talking to voters, showed up everywhere, actually engaged with ranked choice voting with a crossover endorsement strategy, and turned social media into a campaign machine. While Cuomo sat still, Mamdani moved. Cuomo hovered around 35% of first choice support since February. Mamdani started at 1% and climbed to 32% by June. That's not some RCV gimmick. That's the result of one candidate outworking the other. Cuomo also entered this race with more baggage than a Delta terminal during spring break. And he did it in a moment when Democratic voters were clearly frustrated with the status quo. Kamala Harris lost in 2024. Biden didn't step aside when he should have. And the base, particularly in deep blue areas like New York, is looking for something new. So who did the Democratic elites rally around? The guy who inherited his power from his dad and left office in disgrace. Bold strategy. Let's not forget who was propping him up. Bloomberg, Clinton, Jim Clyburn. It was a Wall Street and political royalty reunion tour. If you're wondering why grassroots Democrats didn't swoon, that's probably your answer. So what should conservatives take from this? For starters, RCV is not the villain. If anything, it gives underdog candidates a shot when they can build real coalitions. Mamdani didn't win because of a trick in the system. He won because he worked harder and tapped into real energy. Conservatives, especially the MAGA crowd, should take note. RCV doesn't belong to the left. It belongs to the voters. And when a broken political machine gets challenged by someone willing to knock on every door and shake every hand, that's a story we've seen play out in Republican primaries too. Bottom line, the problem here wasn't the voting system. It was the options. Ranked choice voting just told the truth about who the Democratic voters of New York liked least. And spoiler alert, it wasn't the socialist. It was the guy who thought he didn't need to try.
Well said. Now, we should point out for clarification, the race isn't over yet. Mamdani will, assuming that the vote is confirmed, that after the votes are distributed, the second choice votes, et cetera, are distributed, everybody assumes he's going to secure the Democratic nomination. He still has to run against Eric Adams, the incumbent mayor,
who switched parties.
Who's running as an independent, was pardoned by Trump, probably a foreign agent, definitely corrupt, didn't really keep any of his campaign promises, and is incredibly unpopular. So I think you might have to update that column and rewrite it again in the fall if Mamdani secures the general election victory.
Yeah, I mean, New York is so blue and so Democratic that whoever wins this nomination is essentially going to be the mayor-elect. And the way New York balloting works is they wait. They don't do pre-processing. So all the mail-ins that have been received to this point are sitting in the local election office, and they're still receiving ballots. If your ballot is postmarked by Election Day and is received by Friday, you still get the vote. That's not the way it works in Georgia. If your ballot is not received before the close of polls on Election Day, you didn't vote in the election.
Except for military ballots, right? They're the exception.
Yeah, I mean, there's exceptions for military for all kinds. But for the average voter here,
got to get it in the office.
Yeah, you have to have it in the office. You have a mail-in ballot. You didn't mail it in. You got to run that thing to your local election office in person and drop it off.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's not getting counted. But in New York, that's how they do it. I think it opens the door to conspiracy theories and potential shenanigans when they do it that way. But okay,
I agree. But God bless federalism.
Right?
They can be weird if they want to be.
So there is a mathematical probability at this point because he's in the mid 40s that he's the likely nominee, but they won't start the actual multiple rounds until after Friday. So even though there's a long shot, Cuomo has already conceded.
Yes.
Cuomo called him last night and said,
and more or less threw his support behind him, which undercuts the idea that he would go and run as an independent himself. And why would he? Just further humiliation.
Right. I mean, you can't even win a primary.
Which, for him, heap all the humiliation you want to on him. He's a horrible person and a horrible
politician. Yeah. So that's my take on New York. And if you're out there and you're an RCV skeptic, I still invite you to come comment with me, talk to me, leave a comment below. Let's talk about what your questions are, because this is last time around, New York had some problems with the RCV election. It was a lot of the critics blame RCV for their problems. If you know anything about the problems that they had nothing to do with RCV. It
Right.
was basic human incompetence that could have happened at any point in time. Mistakes happen. You need an election system that catches mistakes and corrects them before serious errors like the wrong person gets elected.
Yeah. Yep.
And all states do a certain amount of bare minimum things to make sure the elections are secure and that every vote is counted accurately and that the actual winner does win.
Right.
But in this election, I'll also point out all of the things that were problems last time did not materialize this time. At least they haven't to this point. And once they have one under their belt, the likelihood of the same errors being repeated are significantly reduced.
Yeah.
So anyway, you got anything else you want to share with the audience before we go?
I thought it was hilarious, kind of a funny little thing. A Waffle House meteorologist was headed to the airport and just for fun sent out on Twitter, "Yes, I have a real ID, but this is the best ID." And showed his Waffle House badge, and that prompted the TSA to say, you cannot use your Waffle House badge to get through the TSA security, and which prompted me to say, I think our congressional delegation should unite around fixing that, rectifying that situation.
Is there any more real ID than a Waffle House ID at 2 o'clock in the morning?
That's like the realest ID.
That is the realest ID you can get. It's not real ID. It's the realest ID.
Exactly.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are brought to you by this group of people who voluntarily reach into their pockets every month and sign up at patreon.com/peachpundit, starting at the $5 level, just so that we can keep the lights on over here. So we really appreciate them. We call them the people who rock. If you want to join them, again, it's patreon.com/peachpundit. They are Sam Thomas, Jordan Reed, Shannon Ferguson, Jeff Cobble, Hank Burnham, Ryan Purvis, James Hall, Colin Martin, Tony West, and our friends at Americans for Prosperity, Robert Lee, and our friends at Lee6 Media, Stuart Wilkinson, Ron Daniels, Mike Buchert, our anonymous contributor who wants you to know more about ALZ.org, Bo Brennan, Ryan Graham, John Vestal, Reed Powell, and Brett Harrell, and our friends at Conservatives Concerned. Again, patreon.com/speechpundit. Head on over there. Visit with our friends at AFP, especially if you're thinking about running for office. Check out that candidate school they've got going on. Like, subscribe, recommend to a make Check out the merch shop. We've got a brand new shirt just in time for the 4th of July. Make Republicans conservative again, featuring my favorite president, Ronald Reagan. It's a beautiful shirt. It's the best beautiful shirt you'll ever see.
The Gipper.
We're not going to be around next week. We're going to take next week off because of the holiday, the big, beautiful, patriotic holiday that is the 4th of July, Independence Day. We hope that you are cool and safe and are able to appreciate this wonderful land that we live in. We'll catch you in a couple weeks. Thank you for listening.
Go to Jackets.